So everybody, I am so excited about this course. This is a Q&A for the course that these two trainers are doing called Evolution of Needs and Values Through the Lens of Spiral Dynamics. The trainers are Kateryna Yasko and Auke von Nimwegen. And I am so touched to be offering this course through the NVC Academy. I met Kateryna, oh gosh, it might have been a year ago. I'm not really great at tracking time, but I think it was like a year ago, Kateryna, when you and I met with 4 of your trainer colleagues in Ukraine.
In spring.
In spring, okay. And we were working with our mutual friend, Duke Duscherer, who's a trainer in the US. And we were talking about the Ukraine war, how to be an NVC trainer in the midst of it, because, you know, Kateryna and her colleagues were all in the midst of this war. And I was learning so much from these trainers. It was so touching to me. And I was shocked at some of my own blind spots. I've been a certified trainer for over 20 years. And I was shocked at some of my own blind spots in how I live NVC and how different it could be in a war-torn country and under great, great trauma. So it was very touching for me. It was powerful. It was profound, life-changing, really. And through the process of that, I put on our site a manifesto about the Ukraine-Russian war, which I have never done before. I'll do it again in other situations. It's currently on the NVC Academy homepage if you'd like to see it. It was written by one of our team members, Auke Haggerty. And for me, it was a powerful change to take a stand on something and to align with the Ukrainian people. So I actually feel touched even just talking about this now. So then we decided to have Kateryna come and do a course, and she decided she wanted to do one in spiral dynamics, and she wanted to invite Auke in to do this with her. And I could not be more thrilled. I have wanted to have a spiral dynamics course on the NVC Academy site for several years. And so the opportunity to bring these two concepts together and to have Kateryna involved and to meet Auke and to have him involved in this is thrilling for me. It's thrilling. So this Q&A, the purpose of this Q&A is to meet the trainers, to get a chance to ask them questions, to learn more about the ongoing course if you have any interest in that. I think you're in for a really interesting Q&A. Kateryna and Auke have pulled together this Q&A, and I think it's going to be really interesting and possibly life-altering for you, like it probably will be for me too. So with that, Kateryna, not to put too much pressure on you, but I will turn this over to you and Auke, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Sophie. And thank you all who found time and energy to join this. I'd like to start from maybe introducing ourselves. I will go first, and then I will kindly invite Auke to say a few words about himself, and then we will address some pieces of the content of the course that we're planning to conduct. And then we will open up for the Q&A. So I'd like to start from saying that I am a certified trainer from Ukraine. And I have a background in psychology and one more degree that was my basic degree, which is international relations and international law. And this is probably one of the reasons why I'm here. It's because I've always had been this deep interest in both psychology and humanistic approach, and then became the NVC trainer, having spent over 10 years learning NVC, practicing, and then starting to share and teach as well. But at the same time, I had this deep interest in international relations and geopolitics. And this lens that I created with time was was related to this big desire to contribute not only at a personal level or at a community level, but also at the level of the social change. So when the war started, there were a number of insights that me and my fellow colleagues from the Ukrainian NVC community had. And we wanted to share, and we really felt that it's very important to speak about our experiences. And we also realized that it's very possible that our Ukrainian experience can actually enrich the NVC. I do not want to use some very big phrases or big words, but sometimes looking at the situation from our region, one may think that what is happening is crash of humanism. Basically, all the humanistic approach and paradigm that we here in the NVC community are adhering to, it is very much under question. And this war is a big test for us, for our consciousness, and also it provides conditions for us to think about what kind of muscles should we train while remaining faithful to our humanistic beliefs, and at the same time having enough power to act consciously and effectively in the situations of horrible aggression and enormous suffering that is produced by certain forces. So I remember Marshall's words that map is not a territory, and many other philosophers also mentioned it many times. And what I realized somewhere in spring, going through my own processing in relation to NVC and how much can it help in the concrete circumstances in my country, I realized that this map, the map of feelings and needs, it's slightly incomplete, so to say, in order to understand what is happening within this enormous geopolitical crisis. So we need more maps, which are not the territory, however, that can help us understand and use effective strategies in order to tackle the situations that we're dealing with. And I consider spiral dynamics as one of those maps which are very helpful to become more discerning, more complete and more whole in our understanding which strategies can be used in which situations. I'd like to also mention that spiral dynamics is, of course, not the only one, and we are conscious of that, both me and Auke. However, since I was trained in spiral dynamics around, I think 2009, like around 12 or 13 years ago, maybe more, I think that through the whole period that I've been conscious of this knowledge and having this map, it always helped me during my NVC practice. So I think time has come to enrich our NVC curriculum so that we could use this wonderful tool and wonderful paradigm of thinking and looking at things, not only in parenting, education, business setups in the Western world, but also to look at the social change problems that we are facing now, but enriching NVC with other maps and approaches and tools that can help us be more wise in using these tools. And I thank you for your attention, and we will say more. And now I would like to pass the floor to Auke, who is my teacher and friend, to say and share why is it important for him to do this course and whatever he has to add.
Okay. Thank you, Kateryna, and thank you everybody for being here and all those people that organized us to having this chat today. I'm from the Netherlands, and one of my interests actually that got me connected to Kateryna is that I've lived in Eastern Europe in the 80s, and I've always been very interested in you could say the balance between autocracy and democracy in Europe. And when Russia attacked Ukraine, of course, this was actually very triggering for myself, and being far away, and of course very traumatic for the people in Ukraine. So that's how we sort of started our conversation, and we found out we shared an interest in spiral dynamics and in NVC. I'm not an NVC trainer, but I met Marshall back in 2002, and I was really inspired by him. So I spent some times in his retreats in Switzerland, in the mountains, and I was really impressed by him because I never met anybody that was so capable of listening to people, to really hearing what people would say. During the retreats, I would just sit next to him all the time. I wouldn't care with any of the other trainers or so. Because to me, that was really inspiring. And we also did some follow-up trainings with Klaus and so on. And what I found is, applying NVC in organizations, which was my main work, required some adjustments depending on the context of the organizations. And I've worked with spiral dynamics since 2004, 2005, and to me that's always been. And I've actually learned with Don Beck, and I've been one of the certified trainers since the early days. And so for me, NVC was a little bit more to the background. And I've been using spiral dynamics to sort of make sense of, both situations in organizations, but also geopolitically, which was, of course, the main work of Don Beck. What some of you may not know is that he's been involved in guiding the transition from apartheid to democracy in South Africa in a peaceful way. And Don has worked with Mandela and de Klerk to do that in such a way that wouldn't be a revolution, but more an evolution. And so that's been my interest. And in the conversations with Kateryna, we sort of agreed that while NVC is a very powerful tool, the way that we've learned about it was you could say in a very tranquil environment. Being in the mountains in Switzerland for me was like, was one of the most beautiful places to have a training. And even there, it was sometimes difficult to apply, right? But it was a very homogeneous, you could say, tranquil environment with like-minded people. And the situation that Kateryna and many people in Ukraine are confronted with is far from that. It's a very chaotic and environment with a lot of direct violence, and so one of the things that we would like to do with this course is using spiral dynamics, give an idea about how you could use NVC in different environments, in different contexts, in what we call life conditions. Very different way. It's very different to apply it in our trainings compared to being in a conflict zone or in a war zone or being attacked. So that's really and in order for us to do that, it means that we have to understand really how different people think from different perspectives. Right. That is, and today we prepared a little teaser for you in that, and so we'd like to invite you to just answer a question and play around a little bit together with how a simple concept can be interpreted, and that may be very clear to us. What it's like, maybe interpreted very differently from different perspectives. So I'll share a slide with you. Just a moment. I have so many windows open with the Q&A and everything that I'm a little bit lost now in my PC. Just a moment. Okay. Good. You guys see the evolution of needs slide here, right? Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay. So what we want to ask you is just use the chat and to answer this question. And the question is, what does respect mean to you? Right. And please don't overthink it. Just the first thing that comes up to you. I think for most people, you could say respect is important. But what does it mean to you? Right. Great, we're getting some responses here. So I'm going to read a few out. Honoring dignity of self and others. Care, honoring all people. Also be integrity. The honoring of human dignity at each level of person. Mutual care. Seeing the people as valuable. Treating others as equal and vice versa. Gelijkwaardigheid, which is equality in Dutch. Care for all, honoring needs and autonomy. Listening. Taking the time necessary to respond to the situation. Honoring human rights such as privacy, dignity, autonomy. Right. Does anybody have a very different definition from it, from the things that I've read out? Unconditional positive regards. Okay, good. So if I read through that list, would you agree with me that respect has a lot to do with the other for you? That if of course there's nuances there and there's differences there, but if I read through it, I see that for most of you, respect has to do with your relationship to others, respecting others. I like the first comment, what was it? Honoring all people, right? Now, and if we sit in an NVC training, I think that it is quite possible that we even could come up with an agreeable definition that all of us would really feel that captures respect. Right? Just have a read through the last ones. It applies to me, doesn't mean to me. Okay. So, but now I want to take you into the world of people that you may not necessarily meet so much in the context that we're meeting right now, right? So if we look at here some definitions of respect, it could mean, respect each other, which is very much in line with what you are writing. But it can also mean, respect God. It's not about me, but it's about God. It's about the scripture, the book. And in other environments, respect is about you respecting me, right? I demand you respect me, which may not need the way that you look at it, but there's a lot of people in the world that would say that, if I don't know if any of you sort of watched the videos of, how Putin communicates with his subordinates, but it's he demands respect, and he doesn't accept people talking against his opinion, basically, right? And it's all, the respect is not towards them, but the respect is towards himself. So if we use spiral dynamics to sort of identify what sort of, you know, types of respect could we find in a world, then we come up with these definitions, right? We come up with a definition in which we could say it's almost tribal, where respect is about respecting the elders, the traditions, and it's not about a personal thing, and it's not about everybody being equal, but it's about respect goes towards, you know, if I would be in a native tribe, I think I would find a lot of that, you know. Or we would have this I demand respect as a person, which I just, you know, the example I gave you was Putin, or, you know, or a Trump, or I'm just using some examples of well-known political leaders. But, you know, if I would go to my local chapter of the Hells Angels, I probably see a lot of that attitude there as well, right? And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. It's just a different definition. Respect there is not about everybody being equal or respecting, for instance, the difference between people, but it's about a personal status, basically. Or, you know, if I go into a church community, respect the Lord book, or I could even draw that into, you know, you could say the old communist system, where I have to respect the scriptures of Marx, for instance. If I go into, you know, the London city, to those that work in the banks there, respect may be about entrepreneurship, about being successful. As we sit here, I think a lot of us share respect as being deserved as equal, right? Or respect could mean different things to different people. Kateryna?
Yes, Auke, thank you. And I think, given the questions that are raised in the chat, it's a good time to define spiral dynamics after this short introduction. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So I'm not going to do too much of that, but basically spiral dynamics is a system that allows us to look a little bit deeper, not about whether respect is important, but what values are underneath what people think and why. And so it is a question, not you know, what is respect to you, but why is respect important to you? We'll in the training we'll talk more about it. But basically, what it allows us to do is to go into a deeper understanding of people, a layer, you know, beyond their behavior and beyond their thinking, as to from what worldview, from what angle, from what values do they look at the world, right? If I demand respect as a person, I may see the world as a chaotic place, and in which only the strong survive. There's quite a few people in the world that actually live their daily lives from that perspective, whereas we, as we sit here, may think that, you know, the world is the people in the world are well intended. You know, everybody is well intended. Some of us may not show that in our behavior because of the traumas we have, but we may see that there is good in all people, which is a very different one. Or if I go into a very religious church community here in the Netherlands, you know, we see the world as created by God. And if we live a good life, we go to heaven. If we live a bad life, we go to hell. You know, and you know, there's many people in the world that every day live from that perspective and act from that perspective. Right? So with spiral dynamics, we're going to look a level deeper. And that also means that when we are communicating with people on these needs, we will find that we will be invited to depart from our definitions of the needs, and we will be invited to start to expand our understanding of needs as being quite different for different people. I wouldn't want to do more introduction of spiral dynamics because that will take a lot of time. But I hope that that gives enough of an idea about what we're going to be talking about. We have another example here. Freedom. What does freedom mean to you, right? And there's an interesting in the COVID times when we had lockdowns and our physical freedom was limited. At least what I saw is there were the two contesting definitions of freedom. One was my personal freedom. I should be able to do what I want, whenever I want, and not having anything to do with others. And the other one was freedom means creating a society in which we take care of the weak ones, and we may limit our own movement to benefit the health of another person. Now that's probably a very black and white definition I'd make there. There's a lot to say about that, but it's to me it was really interesting to see two very competing definitions of personal freedom and of freedom, I would say, either personal or collective, right? And there's not a good or a bad one, but in certain situations one may apply more than in the other, and that's really important, right? So the last example I'm going to give you is, I grew up in the Netherlands in the 70s and 80s, and I was a pacifist. I was a convinced pacifist. I voted for the pacifist party. I refused to go into the army, and we demonstrated against the cruise missiles, and we were, morbidly against anything military, you could say. Now, over the years, this idea started to crack in me, because I felt that it wasn't sustainable under all circumstances. And I started to understand that in that environment I grew up, that probably was not such a bad idea, because we were relatively safe. And despite the Cold War, nobody really expected either the Americans or the Russians to start sending missiles across the border, right? But if you look at Ukraine today, they're in a very different position, right? And so in that context, for me, it is important that Ukraine gets to defend itself from the aggression from Russia. How we think about that whole thing. We're actually in the course, we do a presentation on how that situation actually came to be the way it was. So I don't want to go into that. But to me, it was like, we saw the tanks rolling in, and we saw what Russian soldiers were doing in the occupied areas. And for me, I knew in that situation, Ukrainians should have the weapons to defend themselves, right? And the interesting thing with that is, and this is the last slide I wanted to, before we go into the Q&A, is that we can think of different reasons why Ukrainians want to do that. Again, depending on how I see the world, from which values I see the world, from which value systems in spiral dynamics I see the world. Some Ukrainians may fight to protect their family. Others may fight because they just want to rule themselves. They don't want to be ruled by Russians. Others may there because of nationalistic feelings. This Ukraine is my nation and I want to protect it. Others may find it important to live in a democracy, which is been stumbling but growing clearly in Ukraine over the last decades, right? Or I want to live in a free country where I can freely develop myself. Many people from Ukraine have had the opportunities to connect to communities like the NVC, and that's probably a lot harder living under Soviet rule, for instance, or Russian rule, I should say. So there's different reasons why we can do this, right? And you may or may not agree with some of them. The thing that we will explore in this course is how, from different perspectives, we may look upon such a situation, and we may decide to act very differently in one situation compared to another one, right? So we're give a little bit insight why my mind is different when it comes to Ukraine than it was to the Netherlands in the 70s and 80s. Right? And you may have your own examples in that. Good. I want to open it to the Q&A. Unless, Kateryna, do you have anything to add?
Yes, if I may, expanding on what you just mentioned, I just want to make one point. And this is my own intuition. I think that what we are observing in Ukraine is just the beginning. It's a beginning of a big fight between democracy and autocracy, authoritarian regimes. And it's not going to be a 1 year or maybe 10-year fight. I think it will take longer for the humanity. And this is also part of evolution, collective evolution and social change we have to be prepared for. So my deep insight is that democracies need to be prepared and need to be armed in order to tackle the challenges that we are facing. And I think that I started to speak about the maps and the territories. I think the territories life as it is, very complex, very nuanced. And the maps are the models or knowledge, and then the toolkits that come with this knowledge that enable us to be congruent and to act relevantly to the situations that we're facing. And we just need to be prepared. And it's not about Ukraine and Russia, it's really about China and Taiwan and many other regions that may face the same situation. And being a part of this community, the NVC trainers community and practitioners community, I really want us to be prepared for this challenge.
Hello, Kateryna and Auke. Sorry to interrupt. I've gotten a question personally to me over here. It wasn't sent to the whole group. If you could explain just a bit more about spiral dynamics, meaning this person is asking, is it a concept? Is it an idea? And how does spiral dynamics relate to this concept of respect that you were just, or this need of respect that you were just speaking of? If you could just say a word or two about that.
Okay. I just wanted to add to what Kateryna said, is that it's also I totally agree with what she said, and it also is present in the Western countries, right? So the fight between the Democrats and the Republicans in America and many of our countries, we actually see the same fight, the same dynamics happening. So spiral dynamics is an adult development model, right? It is Graves, who developed it, was did that in the same time that Maslow developed his pyramid of needs, a hierarchy of needs, and so it's a model that explains how, as adults, we develop from less complex to more complex, and how that relates to the life conditions. You know, so life in a tribe is less complex than life in a Western city, in which you have to comply to all sorts of rules and regulations and things like that. And so that's how it tells us how we adapt to that, but how that also completely changes our view in the world. If we live in a tribe, we may see the world as a magic place where the thunder has a meaning. And if we live life, you know, at a university in any country in this world, we may see life as something that could be understood by our minds if we take it apart, and you know, we understand thunder as in its physiological explanation rather than being something magical, which gives us a totally different view of the world, which also gives us a totally different way of we look at different concepts. So in the tribe, respect means respecting the elders. You know, in the city in London, respect may mean, you know, respecting business, or in our NVC environment, respect may mean, you know, respecting other human beings. Yeah.
And I'd like to add that it's really important for us as peacemakers, as mediators, as practitioners who work in various setups. Of course, we deal with people with various, not only cultural backgrounds, but also value backgrounds. And whenever you meet people coming from different domains and different cultures, we may also want to acknowledge that people are also coming from different stages of adult development. Basically, their consciousness may have gone through a different path than ours. And when we just narrow it to feelings and needs from the list, in my view, it is not enough. We need to see how the person interprets this need for freedom, that needs for respect, need for autonomy, etc. When, for example, I'm asked by some of my colleagues, the NVC trainers, about the Russian side, and the question would go, so what are their needs? I find no words to explain it. I think it's not enough. The concept of needs doesn't give us the full picture, the full understanding of what is needed. And what are the strategies that are necessary in order to deal with the situation. So we will use the Ukrainian example, but of course we will speak about much broader concepts in order to let us understand how we can deal with individual and collective challenges related to differences in consciousness and stages of adult development.
I just want to respond to some of the comments that are being made. So when we talk about complexity, it doesn't mean that in a tribe there can't be complex relationships. But for instance, in a tribe, in a tribal environment, the tribe is focused on itself, and its rules and regulations are, for instance, are set by the elderly, and in that it's a you could say it's a limited environment. If you work in the EU and you have to create laws and regulations for all these different countries with all these different people, that is more complex to do. And it doesn't say anything about intelligence. It doesn't mean that the person that does it in the EU is more intelligent than somebody that works in a tribe. There's nothing to do with that. It is about what is our life conditions, what do we face, and how do we deal with that? So that is the essence of when we talk about a growing complexity. And the spiral is, relating to another comment, the spiral is a system that you could say repeats. We keep repeating the same developments, but we go to more and more complex levels. Where in the 1500s we were busy focusing on our countries and organizing our countries with some international relationships. Today, in order to deal, to continue life on Earth, we'll have to find a way to get all countries in the world to work together on peace, on the climate, and many other things. And that is just a lot more complex than the way life was 200 years ago. And it's a matter of survival. It's not it's not a nice thing to do, but it's something that we need, that we are driven to do, because we are evolving to a more and more complex world, right? And again, it's nothing to do with intelligence. So the values that drive me don't define my intelligence. And at every level of complexity, we have the same level of intelligence, right? But we have different ways of interacting with our environments.
Yes, and of course, there's nothing to do about looking at earlier stages or value means as worse or less intelligence or less developed. There's nothing to do about it. Vice versa, in order to deal with the current challenges and preserve the cultures. For example, me, myself, as a Ukrainian, am super interested in preserving my culture and developing my culture while being part of the EU, as country has received the status of a candidate, and being part of the broader international community. And of course, I'm super interested in that the countries and cultures in would it be North or South America or Africa, would be able to preserve their wonderful cultures with complex connections with very rich rituals. This is all huge value for the world, but in order to preserve it, and in order to see these clashes between the international corporations coming into these lands and bringing the new values, and how we can all think of preserving it and giving place to everything and create regulations so that justice and fairness would be met in terms of the needs that we all respect and share. This is a huge challenge, and the complexity is super necessary, and the maps on how to look at it are important and helpful to deal with that. That's my small addition on why spiral dynamics could be one of the helpful tips for us to look at it.
I want to make a last comment before we have to close for today. Because sorry, I cannot answer all the questions. We simply have not enough time for it. But Michelle is saying healthy development doesn't mean that we leave behind values. That's true, and the way we talk about it in spiral dynamics, we transcend certain life conditions and then we include them again, right? But in a different way. So there's things may start to mean different things to us. But, you know, like the tribal life that our ancestors knew, today, it's still important to us, but it's the family, it's the connection, it's the friends. So that layer is still in us, but it is in us in a very different, in a different context, in a very complex world, right? But those values that we've developed there, like connection and warmth and, you know, security, or safety, I should say, that's still there, right? And so last comment. So what will you learn in the course is to start to see that in other people, to start to understand, you know, how different people talk differently from different perspectives. And it's the course is quite short, so we'll give you a first insight into that. And it will probably develop in you in the next years as you start to integrate it into your daily life.
Yeah, and I'd like to acknowledge Michelle writing transcend and include. Yes, this is really the principle of the integral theory and spiral dynamics in particular, transcend and include. And acknowledge all the needs, all the feelings, within all the paradigms of thinking, and creating this discernment in using the strategies that fit the stage and life conditions.
And last comment, one thing you will learn is that while fighting is going on in Ukraine from two sides, the values behind it, the reason why, are vastly different. And that's one of the things that we will highlight, you know, that it's not you could say in general, Ukrainians are fighting from a very different set of values and position than Russians are doing that.
All right. Thank you so much, Kateryna and Auke. I have enjoyed this very much, and I look forward to your class immensely, actually. It starts January 26th, and I am looking forward to seeing many of you in that course. I really think this course is going to be provocative in some ways and profound for sure in other ways, and might give us all a different perspective that I think could be really valuable. So any final words from you, Kateryna or Auke, before we sign off?
Just gratitude to you, Mary, and your team. And I'd like to say that with this course, it's part of my healing. I guess that it's very important to act. And I remember this phrase, what was said by Marshall when he said, I do not believe in tears without prayers. I do not believe in prayers without tears. And I do not believe in any action without previously going through tears and prayers. So this course is an action that is a result of prayers and tears. So thank you very much for your attention to it.
Thank you, Kateryna.
I think those are fantastic closing words for today. I have nothing to add to that.
Mm.
And thank you all for being here.
Yeah, Auke, I just want to say that I was so touched when you were mentioning Marshall and his Switzerland home and his retreats that he used to do there, that just like, oh, remember those days as well.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Sophie, thank you so much for holding this for us today. And take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.